Hi, this is Rabbi Orlofsky, and welcome to the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. And whether you're watching with our friends over at Torah Anytime, who, as we established when we came back, are actually the ones who are filming and editing the podcast and putting it up on the various platforms, much to their credit, not just for what they're doing, but the fact that they're willing to put it up on other platforms and not just on Torah Anytime. That's certainly a wonderful thing. Or wherever you watch or listen to your podcast, as always, it's wonderful to have you along for the experience. Welcome back. And I need to first make a public service announcement, and that is, in the last podcast, I mentioned about our upcoming Pesach program that's looking more and more like it's going to happen. And I have received quite a number of panicked emails from people saying, please let me pay now. I don't want to get left out. I don't have the finalization with the hotel. We're still meeting and working out the details. So I'm happy to take your money under any circumstances, obviously. But until I know exactly that the hotel is going to do things the way that I want and agree to, my various requirements, and then we can be able to put together the pricing, we're not going to be actually opening up for reservations. But all of those of you who wrote me, I have you now in a special file, and once we're ready to go public, I will tell you first. As I mentioned, I'm only advertising through Rabbi Orlofsky forums, my podcast, my shiurim, my website. So it's only going to be us, various crazies, who are going to be coming for Pesach. And don't worry, those of you who have reached out to me, I'm going to make sure and keep a spot for you. Because people are saying, look, I don't want to miss out. I need 6 rooms, I need 8 rooms, I need 10 rooms. Okay, there's 150. So we haven't gotten rid of all of them yet. So don't worry, So, but certainly, we will close this deal up sooner rather than later. So just stay calm. Don't worry. We have not forgotten about you. I'm not ignoring you. And speaking of people who are thinking of us over here at the Rabbi Orlofsky Show, we have a sponsor this week from Anonymous. I'm finally sponsoring an episode. I decided that it's about time to show at least an itsy-bitsy physical amount of Hakaras HaTov to Rabbi Orlofsky and his show. Thank you so much. It's people like you who make this possible. And, we were off the air for a few weeks, and, a lot of people had a hard time. So I'm glad about that. I would hate to think that we just missed a few weeks and people could care less. Yep. I'm not exaggerating or being dramatic, though I've been known for such things when I say it has saved my life. Yikes. I'm glad you're still with us. Yeah. Remember, those of you whose life is dependent on this show, you can always rewatch the old ones until, if something goes wrong. Yeah. It reminds me of the little and big joys of life and in Judaism, and I am so grateful. The Rabbi Orlofsky Show makes me feel good and reminds me why I want to continue on my life's journey. I love your laughs and the sense of community it gives me. There's so much I have to say on this. This is not the first time somebody has said this to me, that this is not a show. It's not a shiur. It's not a show. Yeah, it's a community. We're in this together. And my kids tell me sometimes that, they meet people, strangers, and they're like, are you the one who... Because I'm an oversharer, obviously, and, my kids' lives and ours and my extended family, everybody is included in this whole thing, and everyone feels like they're really a part of it, which to me is a very, very special thing. I now have 3 boys, but I had 2 girls, and then my son, Yaakov, who's been on the show a number of times, and then 6 girls. So for a long time, I only had, I had 8 girls and 1 son. Later, I got the 2 little boys, later in life. But that was it. So my son said to me once, when you say one of my girls or one of my daughters, nobody knows who you're talking about. But when you say my son, everyone knows you're talking about me. I said, okay, I won't say my son anymore. I'll say one of my kids. So one of my kids was going to Cheder. Didn't really help. But anyway, so my kids know we're all in this together, and that's why I'm just going back to this, the Pesach program. I'm recruiting my family. Everyone is very talented. They're all going to be doing things. In fact, my son-in-law in America, who didn't know that I had announced this, that everyone's going to be doing something, someone came up to him on the street and said, "So what are you doing at the Pesach program?" And he was like, "What? What am I doing? What do you mean?" He didn't know that I've already recruited everybody to be doing things. And I just had this einfall. I had an idea that I was thinking of having sign up, for a Wecker call, if you want to get up for davening and you're afraid you don't have an alarm clock. So I'm going to maybe recruit a few of my grandchildren who get up at the crack of dawn, and we'll have your room numbers, and they'll go around and knock on your doors and wake you up, which is making use of another talent that we have in the family. But that we're all in this together. The whole family is into this. It's not just something that I do, and so hopefully, we're all in this together. So definitely, it's a community, and when you mention this, it makes me feel good and reminds me of why I want to continue my life's journey. I got to tell you. They didn't have it last year. I hope they have it this year, but they didn't have it last year. There's a tremendous event that they have during the 9 days here in Israel, a giant kenis to be mechazek in Shmiras HaLashon. They used to bring in top speakers. When originally, in its first iteration, every community would have speakers, during a day. And then they would end in English and in Hebrew. In every community, they would put out this gigantic chart, and there would be shurim taking place every place all around Yerushalayim. It was an amazing thing. And then they would end with a giant kenis in Binyan Yomah, thousands of people. And they would have one in Hebrew and one in English. I was never invited to speak at the big kenis. The people running it either felt that I wasn't that important or that I was too much of a loose cannon. And then eventually it closed down. But somebody came along and restarted the large kenis. And I was recruited to speak one year. And after that, they would include me almost every year. If I wasn't speaking, then they would make me the MC of the evening. And they wanted me to be involved. I remember one time when they asked me to be the MC, or Weinbach Zatzal, I was working in Or Sameach, and he says, "I don't think it's covered for Or Sameach that you should just be the MC." I said, "Look, they have to mix up the speakers. They can't bring the same speakers every year. And I think this is a very important thing. So I'll do whatever they want so I can be machazek. It's such a chizik evening. It's such an amazing thing, I said, if they ask me to set up the chairs, I'll set up the chairs. I just think anything you could do to be machazek this is a tremendous thing." Anyway, Rabbi Weinberger, who took it over and was organizing it, would ask me, can you suggest English speakers, etc. So this went on for a number of years. And every now and then I would meet Israeli girls, sometimes Israeli women, but Israeli teenagers, who would say to me, ani bala kenis ba'anglit. I'd come to the English kenis and I said, "Is your English good enough?" He says, "It's a beseder, they must speak." I said, "Why don't you go to the Hebrew one?" And I said, "Because it's so heavy and it's so negative. And I walk out feeling like I'm being beaten up. When you go to the English one, everyone is so positive. Everybody, it's a positive message. It's happy. It's enjoyable. I'd rather listen to that in my poor English comprehension than to go where it's negative." And I would like to think that I had something to do with this. The very first time I spoke, people started applauding. And my wife said to me, "You don't understand, nobody applauds at this thing. It's very heavy." And it's like, But I tried to lift the level up a little bit to be more positive. I think you catch more flies with honey than you do with vinegar. Why you want to catch flies, I'm not very clear. I never understood that part of it. But you'll get more of them that way. So since I'm trying to catch the flies, which the Chazal tell us that the Yetzer Hara is compared to a fly, so I want to pull everybody's Yetzer Hara away from them so that they can go on and grow in their Yadus. So thank you so much for this beautiful beautiful sponsorship. So last time we talked about the war that just took place, and we have obviously been at war now already for 2 years in Gaza, and we've talked about this at length. In fact, we had a whole series of shiurim on Shabbos because there were those Gedolei Torah who said it took place on Shabbos, so that we need to be mechazek our Shmir Shabbos. And we had a whole series of shiurim, mechazek Shabbos. We talked about this a lot. And I had at one point Rabbi Dovid, who used to go around and work on all the college campuses to talk about the anti-Semitism on campuses and things. But there's a recent development, and I don't like to talk politics per se. In fact, one of the questions, the question answer is politics. I don't like to talk about politics per se. I leave that to my son Yaakov, who comes on and talks more about those inyanim. He's very Isaac in these things. There's it has to be seen, not so much politics as much as being seen in a broader context. What do I mean by that? Already when the attack took place, before Israel responded, and it took Israel a while to respond, but even then, when the attack had taken place, 1,200 people were killed and raped and burnt and beheaded and all these terrible things, there were people coming out in support of Hamas. It's mind-boggling. It's mind-boggling. And then as you follow the news and you see all of the hatred and the vitriol that goes supposedly against Israel, but of course is against the Jews in general. The line between Jews and Israel is very thin. In fact, there was an amazing story. The Satmar Rebbe was not a proponent of Zionism, to put it mildly. Yeah, he was anti-Zionist. He felt the Zionistic movement was a bad thing. And Rabbi Yoel Teitelbaum. And this politician was coming to meet with him because when you're a politician, to be able to get a voting block is a very chashuv thing. You want to get that group of people voting for you, especially if there's somebody who votes together. And obviously, a community of Hasidim, if the Rebbe says vote this way, they'll vote that way. That's the way it goes. So it's true about other voting blocks. Not all of them are monolithic, because the Democrats took it for granted that blacks and Hispanics will vote for them, and a lot of them crossed over and voted for Trump. But when you can get a Hasidic community, if the Rebbe says, vote for this one, as a rule, they will. Yeah. So if you can get the Rebbe on your side of a particular Hasidic group, it definitely helps. So whoever the politician was coming to meet with him. And he's speaking to his Jewish advisor beforehand. And he says, look, I'm not worried because I have 100% voting record with the State of Israel. I've always supported the State of Israel. So he says, look, you're going to have a little problem here because this rabbi doesn't support the State of Israel. He says, so what do I do? He says, you have other things that you can talk about. Programs that are going to support large families. They have large families. Talk about, subsidies to parochial schools because their kids all go to parochial schools. Yeah, there are other issues you can talk about. Housing, fine. So he comes in to meet with the Rebbe, and the Rebbe says, okay, what have you got to say? And he gave all of the reasons that his advisor told him why you should support him. And the Satmar Rebbe is listening. And finally, at the end, he says, okay, I just have one last question. What's your position about the state of Israel? So he says he wasn't going to lie. He's a politician. I guess he figured, what's the point? He could just look up my voting record. He said, I have voted 100% with the state of Israel. And he held his breath. And Rabbi Orlofsky said, in that case, you have the full support of my community. I will tell everybody in my community to vote for you. And after the politician left, the Gabbai said, Rebbe, you're becoming a tziyoni? He says, you don't understand. If I criticize the state of Israel, I'm doing it because I'm a Yid. And this is a fight among us. But if someone out there criticizes the state of Israel, it's just anti-Semitism. It's because they don't like Jews. So you see this when people say anti-Israel, anti-Zionism. It's a second away from the Jews, and the Jews this and the Jews that. It's a terrible thing. Anyway, I mention this because of a tremendous development that has taken place in New York City. Life for frum Jews has not been so good in New York as it was under, let's say, Giuliani and Bloomberg, where they ran the city well. Mayor de Blasio, who his campaign slogan was taken from Che Guevara. He was basically a communist, did terrible damage to the city. Mayor Adams came in. He did not, let's just say he's not a Giuliani or a Bloomberg. He was not able to fix the damage and put the city back the way it was supposed to be. He claims that some of it's not his fault because he doesn't have the control that he needs, But okay, whatever it is, but at least he was trying. That's what he says. I'm not a politician. I can't tell you. I can't tell you about reality. What I know about politics, I get from watching Trump, and Trump is not a politician. I don't know what he is. He is a force of nature. It's just unbelievable. But anyway, the Democrats came after him. It wasn't really much of a secret because he criticized the Biden administration handling of the illegal immigrant situation and how New York City was being affected by it. And so they opened up a Justice Department case against him, and it was clearly intimidation. It was they like to use the justice system against their enemies. Time after time this has been seen, and so he became very upset and very disenchanted, and he became an independent. Decided he's not running as a Democrat. He's not going to become a Republican. He's going to run as an independent. Fine. So that meant who's going to be the Democratic nominee for mayor? And there was a large field of candidates that were going. And the most candidate with the most name recognition was, of course, former Governor Cuomo, who left under questionable circumstances, whether he needed to resign or not. Again, that's politics. I don't get involved. But he had been governor of the state. Now he was running to be mayor, and he had the name recognition. And the person who eventually won was a fellow whose father was from Pakistan. His mother was from India. He was born in Uganda. And he won. He won with 10% of the vote. Nobody came out to vote in this primary. Nobody cared that much. It was hot, And he claims that he is sometimes a socialist, sometimes a communist. He wants to have government-run grocery stores, But one of his positions that he's very strong with is he speaks in the language of anti-Semitism. He sometimes cloaks it as anti-Israel, but it's clearly anti-Semitic. When he says the Intifada, which of course was the uprising to kill the Jews, needs to be globalized, what he means is that everybody should go out and attack the Jews. That's the message. Not that we should protest, not that we this. He was one of the people who came out on October 8th, the day after the massacre, when Israel hadn't done anything, in support of Hamas. This is it's just a disaster. This fellow is terrible. I happen to be a Governor DeSantis aficionado. I really like him. I like his policies. I like the way he writes things. It's a little unfortunate that he has this sort of voice that doesn't go over so well. A little flat, a little nasal, a little monotone. But as far as his policies go, he's great. Yeah. And he had the best quote when he got nominated, and he said, "I didn't think prices in Florida could get any higher." There are communities that are starting to move en masse down to Florida. And I mean, he's proposing racist policies. He says, I think we should have a higher tax rate in areas that are mostly white and wealthy. So when you say I want to tax white people, it's kind of racist, And it's just terrible. It's just terrible to watch this. And let's keep things in perspective. Is he a terrible person? Yes. I think that's pretty clear. Are his positions terrible? Yes. Does he have supporters? Yes. As much as everyone thinks? I don't know. May Adams is still running. So is Curtis Sliwa. He's running on the Republican ticket over there. He's never done particularly well in mayoral races, and personally, I think that the Republicans should find somebody of a Giuliani stature and cut a deal with Adams and Sliwa that they should drop out and run somebody who's a serious candidate. I think it would be a real big opportunity to change things in the city and really repair it the way that it was under Giuliani. But like I say, I don't know anything about politics. I'm not really involved. But in Chicago, they elected also a communist, racist black mayor, and he has something like a 8% approval rating. He's destroyed Chicago. They do this wherever they go. They put in these really extreme people, and they destroy the city. San Francisco at one point was a beautiful city. It was an unbelievable accomplishment, and it was very upscale and nice and wonderful. And it's destroyed. It's a slum. It's a terrible thing, and that's what poor governance has the ability to do. It was very interesting when Giuliani took over from Dinkins, became mayor of New York. The city was out of control, terrible crime rate, all kinds of things like this. And Giuliani told the police, "We're going to focus on two things." You have to be old to remember this. When you would stop at a traffic light, these homeless people would come in with a spray. They'd spray your windshield, rub it down with a dirty rag, and then bang on your window till you gave them money. He says, we're going to get rid of the windshield wiper people, and we're going to get rid of the graffiti artists. We're going to clean up all the graffiti, and if we find anybody, we're going to prosecute them to the full extent of the law. And the police were like, we have murders, we have robberies, we have all kinds of terrible crimes, and that's what you want to focus on? He says, those two things send a message to the people of the city. It says New York is Hefker. Hefker. You can do whatever you want. And when you have people who feel like it's Hefker, I'll give you an example. There are neighborhoods here in Eretz Yisrael, Haredi neighborhoods, which are not very clean. There's a lot of litter all over the streets. And this has led to people making claims, of course, that the Haredim don't care about dirt, they don't take care of their neighborhoods, they're not concerned, etc. And somebody asked me this once in a question and answer, and I said, I have a kasha. When I go to Kiryat Sefer, which is a completely Haredi-run city, it's not like that. There's not dirt all over the place. So, according to you, it should be one of the filthiest places in New York. How come it's not that way? I said, I'll tell you why. Because the city would put out dumpsters based on what they anticipated a family is going to be. And so, when you take the average Israeli family, which has 1 kid and 2 dogs, so they don't produce that much trash, and you don't need that many dumpsters. But when you come to a Haredi neighborhood, where if you only have 8 kids, you're going for fertility treatments, you know what I mean? And there's just an enormous amount of people. I tried to give a perspective to people. I grew up in a little town called North Merrick. And my father was one of the founders of a conservative synagogue about a mile away, the East Meadow Jewish Center. East Meadow had Jews. North Merrick was mostly Catholic. Merrick was Jewish, but that was 3.5 miles away from us. But we lived in North Merrick. So East Meadow was closer. And, it was a conservative synagogue. When I, had my Rabbi Orlofsky, Zatzal, who helped to get me to become frum, I started davening at the Young Israel of North Belmore. I was 1.25 miles away. But it was an Orthodox shul. It was a small Orthodox shul. And we had maybe 30 families, maybe 40, I'm not sure. It was a very small shul. I live here in Har Nof. There are many buildings here that have 24 apartments. And I tell people that 2 buildings in Har Nof has more Yidden than I grew up with in my community. 4 buildings, that's already a reasonably sized one. But you go down one side of one street, forget about it. It's one of the biggest shuls you'll find in America. A whole half of one side of a street. So there's enormous, tens of thousands of people living here. So when you go to put in your garbage and the dumpster's overflowing through poor management, because somebody dumps a few bags on top, if they would move it around, everything would tumble in and it would be okay, but people don't, they just load it up. So you end up leaving the bags of garbage outside. So now when I have a wrapper, why should I stick it into the full thing? I'll just toss it on the ground next to the pile. And so you start to lose respect for the basic functioning of society. And now it's better, Baruch Hashem, they put in these dumpsters that are underground, and you just open it up and you drop it in. You don't see piles of garbage outside like you used to. And Mamela, you find that it's cleaner. Things are more mesudar. People don't just throw things on the ground because it's a hefker. So he said, you have to show people that it's not hefker, that there's a quality of life, that you have to keep it going. That's gone now. When you have homeless people living in the street, and they do not have access to bathrooms, and the whole city just becomes this terrible place, and people, you can see videos of these homeless people going around and accosting people and attacking people and doing all these terrible things. After a while you just start to lose hope. So all we're missing now is a mayor who's a communist, who is an anti-Semite, who really, he says, the problem is supermarkets. We should have city-run supermarkets so that people can buy food cheaper. Oh yeah, because the government does a great job with that. They take a look and see how it went in Cuba and in Russia and in Colombia and all the other communist havens. How well that works when the government works on food distribution. Yeah. So it's a terrible thing. So it doesn't mean anything, because it could be he's not going to get elected, but it just sends a call to how mainstream it's become. And that's not the scariest thing. Okay, the left wing hates us. One can give theories as to why that is. Some people say it's because, the whole left wing philosophy is that the world is divided between oppressed and oppressors. And because the Palestinians, don't have their own state, they're seen as oppressed. So therefore, anyone who tries to fight against them are the oppressors. Even though we've said many times we'd be happy to try to work out some kind of a peace deal, etc. They don't want peace. Both Prime Minister Barak and Olmert basically offered them the entire West Bank and Gaza to make their own state. And when Barak made them this offer, they countered by starting the second intifada. Why? Because there was a guy named Sadat, who was the head of Egypt, and he said, I'm going to sign a peace treaty with Israel, and they shot him dead. So how long do you think a Palestinian leader is going to last if he says, let's make peace? Shoot him in the head. So you need the conflict. Arafat knew that when he was offered, whatever he wanted. He says, it can't. Our whole raison d'etre is to hate Jews and to fight against them. We can't sign a deal with them. And it's a big problem. I remember when I was in Discovery, it was a question and answer, and Matti Berger, who tends to be, state his positions in a very clear and strong manner. So somebody said, look, he was talking about the whole situation in the Middle East, and they said, look, the Arabs want the same thing that we want. Everybody wants the same thing, to be able to earn a living, to be able to live in a safe area, to be able to send the kids to school, And he said, the biggest mistake you make is thinking that everybody wants the same thing. That's what Neville Chamberlain said when he went to meet with Hitler in the Munich Agreement. He doesn't want war. He doesn't want death and destruction. He just wants a fair deal for his country. He wants to right the wrongs that were done in the Treaty of Versailles at the end of World War I. But everybody wants the same thing. No. He wants to conquer the world and kill everybody. Do you ever read Mein Kampf? But he couldn't process that, because doesn't everybody just want the same thing? No, they don't all want the same thing. Douglas Murray, who of course is a brilliant commentator, he talks about he refers to Hamas as a death cult. I forgot which Palestinian leader it was who said that we're going to win this war because we're willing to die and you're not willing to die for what you believe in anymore. It's a good gesagt. Yeah? We don't want to die. We think life is important. Whereas to the Arabs, there's one guy, he says he was running, he runs a car garage, repair store. And one of his Arab workers said, you don't understand. He says, when I misbehaved, my father took me up to the roof, held me by my foot over, and said, next time I'll drop you. That's how I grew up. Talk about creative parenting, Says, we don't mind. I assume people have seen the videos of where the Hamas people will grab a child and hold him as a human shield as they're shooting. I don't care. And they tell you, oh, everybody wants the same things. No, they don't. You'll never find an Israeli who, even when he shoots a terrorist, will call up his parents and say, Mom, I killed an Arab today. Oh, you're so proud of me. They have a recording of the Hamas people on October 7th. I killed Jews. I murdered them with my own hands. There were these 3 soldiers who made a wrong turn, ended up in Palestinians' area, and they were butchered, were killed. And I remember this picture with the Arabs who had killed them hold their hands up, covered in their blood, to a cheering crowd. When I saw that, I said, there is no way to make peace with these people. These people want to die. They want to die, and they want to kill us. And they don't care. Life is not important to them. You know, you're not allowed to wear shoes with cleats on Shabbos, says the Gemara. You know why? Because one time there were Jews who were hiding in the cave, and there were people on top walking with shoes with cleats, and they heard the sound, and they thought that the Goyim were coming for them. And so they ran out of the cave, and some people got trampled and got killed. And because of that, they said, you can't wear shoes with cleats. And even though there are times you need shoes with cleats, at least on Shabbos, this incident took place on Shabbos. So on Shabbos, has nothing to do with dosh, has nothing to do with chofer, has nothing to do with anything like that. Yeah, it is not chorich, it's not making holes. It's because these people died on a Shabbos because of someone with shoes with cleats. We never wear shoes with cleats. Because life is important. And therefore, you can be Machal Shabbos to save somebody's life. Yeah? V'chai behem. We understand that life is such an important concept. Whatever you can do. But Moshe Feinstein, and this is what I heard, I tell you the truth, I never saw the Psak, and I never checked it out. I'm not Pesach Kron, everyone knows this, I hear something and I say it over. But people in Hatzalah told me that they have a Psak that you can drive someone to Shabbos, on Shabbos to the hospital, and you can drive back. Why? Because if I know I'm going to drive this person to the hospital, and then I'm going to be stuck in the hospital for the whole Shabbos, I'm going to hesitate about whether or not I should drive them there. And that hesitation might cause them to die. Right, Berkowitz has a very interesting psak. I've heard this from people. I didn't hear it from Ray Berkowitz. You can be Mechal Shabbos to go to the hospital, and you can be Mechal Shabbos to leave the hospital. Because it's so dangerous to be in a hospital. There are people that I know who went into the hospital for something, and then they caught a staph infection in the hospital, and that's what they died from being in the hospital, not from what they went to the hospital for. So hospitals are a dangerous place. But that's how seriously we take life. Don't hesitate. Somebody told me, I made Rabbi Orlofsky laugh. So I never saw him actually. I got him to laugh. Because there was somebody in B'nai Brak who put out a sefer. And he said, if your wife is giving birth on Shabbos, so the best thing is to take her there on a bicycle. If she won't go with the bicycle, try to get a horse and carriage. Can't get a horse and carriage, keep going up until if you have to, drive her there. It says, someone showed him this plaque and he just burst out laughing. He says, some nut might actually do this. Someone might think, oh yeah, wait, my wife is in labor, got to get her to the hospital, I'll put her on the bicycle. Yeah. This is what you do. When it comes to Atzalas Nefashos. And so, of course, to us, life is so precious and so valuable. What we won't do to try to keep somebody alive a little longer. And very often in hospitals, they don't understand this. Yeah. My father, when we were in the hospital, I got there on Erev Shabbos. He died Friday night. So I got there that Erev Shabbos, we were in the hospital. And at some point they come in to my mother and say, we want you to sign a DNR. She said, do not resuscitate. Because you don't want him to suffer. And she was like, no, I don't want him to suffer. And she signs the DNR. I didn't say anything because, my mother was, from the time my father went into the hospital, she stayed there and slept in the chair next to him and never left him, She was, she wasn't ready to hear anything. But very often, they pressure you to sign a DNR because people haven't really thought about it. Do not resuscitate. And they're trained to get you this. Why? Because they want your organs. And they can't take the organs out of a dead person. So they had to come up with a new definition of dead. So you're ke'ilu dead. And take your, so they can take your organs. They came up with brain death. Anyway, but people are not prepared for this question. So, I had thought about it. I read up about it. And of course, halakhically, it's a problem. So I was in America going in for a gallbladder operation, emergency gallbladder operation. And they said to me, do you want to sign a DNR? And I said, no. And they said, but the procedures could be very invasive. I said, be as invasive as you can. I am not going. And they said, but you might be a vegetable, you might have to live. I said, my goal is to be a burden to my children. I'm not signing it. So they didn't know what to do. They apparently had never met this kind of certainty before because they're trained to get you, to manipulate you psychologically to sign it. But to be able to keep somebody alive. And that's why very often, when there are certain procedures, the hospitals will say things like, look, he's so old already, why don't you, why should we, do this procedure? And our position is, keep him alive. Keep him alive. If we can do something that'll give him an extra month, an extra hour, we do it. Because life is precious. Yeah. Lo amesim yahaluka. Yeah. When you're alive, you can do things. When you're alive, you can accomplish stuff. When you're dead, it's all over. So, these are people who don't care. They celebrate killing Jews. If we have to kill Arabs, we kill Arabs. But that's why the claim of genocide. Oh, Israel doing genocide. What a ridiculous thing to say. We could just send in planes and blow up everything. Instead, we send soldiers into houses and Rahmana. Sometimes they're booby-trapped and they get killed. It's just happened recently. We send our children in there because we're worried about loss of life of civilians. That doesn't make a difference. I say if they're going to accuse us of it already, you might as well just go in there and blow it up. Why should we risk Jewish lives to do this? But you see, Israel goes to tremendous lengths, and it helps nicht. Doesn't make a difference. Whatever happens, they will come out in the same way, with the same criticisms and the same accusations. It's just terrible. And the same people who are apologists for Hamas, who murdered Jews, and their whole shita is to kill Jews. Someone showed me a video from this place called I think it's called the Babylon Bee. They do takeoffs, and the person is interviewing the Hamas terrorist, and he says, "What are your grievances that have led you to this situation that you feel that you're so oppressed that you have no choice? What is it that you're really looking for?" And he goes, "We want to kill all of the Jews." He says, no. That's only because of part of an uprising, because you feel that you're oppressed. He goes, "Oh, no. That is our charter. We want to destroy and kill every Jew, wherever they are." He says, "No, of course that's not really your position." He goes, "Yes, it's in our charter. Here, I'll send it to you right now." He says, okay, could we just stop there? He goes, no, really, is there any Jews here? I will kill them right now. He says, and then the Christians. That's what they write in their charter, and everyone's trying to say, no, they don't really mean that. They So anyway, the guy keeps saying it over and over again. So at the end of the interview, the interviewer looks at the camera and goes, I guess we'll never really know what their motivations are. It's pretty clear. Ben Shapiro, the commentator, said a very interesting thing. He says, they're worse than the Nazis, because at least the Nazis tried to hide what they did. He says, Hamas puts up the videos of them murdering people, and they're proud of it, and they dance in the streets. At least the Nazis tried to cover it up and fake out the world that they weren't really absolute, horrible people. So the point is, when you see what's happening in New York, and you see people, screaming anti-Semitic things, when you see in London anti-Semitic rallies, when you see in Sydney mobs screaming gas to Jews, when you see all these things taking place, it reminds us people don't like us. That's the reality. And the chesed that there's a president of the United States who wants to defend the Jews, wants to defend Israel, and he put together a cabinet of very pro-Israel people. It means that Baruch Hashem, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is peeking through the cracks, as the pasuk says in Shir Hashirim. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is letting us know that he is not giving up on us. But when we see the hatred, it's there to remind us we're a nation that dwells alone, and that people don't want us to be part of them. And when we try to become part of their society and be accepted by them, Israel goes to this song contest, the Eurovision. I didn't see it, but people tell me the singer, the Israeli singer, is being booed and being screamed at and insulted, and we think, yeah, they're going to accept us, they're going to like us. Yeah, there's only us and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. There's only Torah. That's all that there is. And hopefully, when we'll have enough friends to get us through till Mashiach comes, to keep us going. And when you see how quickly things turned around, Iran said they surrounded us with a ring of fire, Hamas on one side, and Hezbollah on the other, and the Yehuda and Shomron on the other, and everybody was supposed to come and attack us and destroy us. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu, one by one, has stopped these threats and took them away and took them down. And we need to appreciate. We need to express that appreciation and to give that hoida'ah to Hashem, that Baruch Hashem we've been saved, and have that idea. And so when we see this anti-Semite be nominated by the Democrats for mayor of New York City, and Jews are wondering, what does this mean for us? It means that we've got room here. You don't have to go to Florida. We have room in Eretz Yisrael. We'll find more room for you. We'll fit you in. We'll take care of you. And that's not to say there aren't problems here. Plenty of problems here. But it means that the Yidden in Eretz Yisrael are standing together, and we should appreciate this. Okay. And that brings us to the question and answer portion of our program. Anonymous writes, I was a student of yours over 25 years ago in seminary. Oh, I can't imagine that was possible. 25 years ago, I was still in high school. They're coming out with a new Superman movie, so I always say if they can reboot Superman every few years, I can have my own reboot. So I'm rewriting my thing. But okay. I was a student of yours over 25 years ago in seminary. I discovered your podcast a few years ago. My friends, there are a lot of people who don't even know that this has been going on for 6 years. So, send clips to people. I have to send this out there to make sure that people know about it, because there's a lot of people who appreciate it. Every now and then I meet somebody who says, I just discovered the podcast. I started watching from the beginning, 6 years of it. Yikes. Anyway, I especially enjoy that you answer questions on a variety of random topics, which leads me to my question. It is said that during a chuppah, it is one of those times considered auspicious to daven. I have noticed recently after the ceremony, people are walking under the chuppah to daven. Is there something specifically about being under the chuppah? Also, what does it mean, auspicious time? Aren't our tefillas always heard? Okay, let's make a seder. Are our tefillas always heard? Yes. However, as you know, when you have a child-proof cap, it's very hard to open the cap. I always think it's ironic that arthritis medicine comes in child-proof caps when people with arthritis can't possibly open them up. But you know that the suggested way is to line up the two arrows, and then it opens easier. I can't say it opens easy, but it opens easier. What if the arrows are not lined up? Can you open it? Sure, you can get yourself a pair of pliers and rip it off. You can get a knife and cut it open. But it's not as easy as when the arrows are lined up. So too, we live in a world that's limited by time and space. And so there are certain times and certain places which are more auspicious for our tefillas to be accepted. And therefore, Ki beisi beis tefillas, right? The Beis Hamikdash is a makam hatefillah. Shlomo Melech says when people daven here, the tefillah should be answered. So we understand that the makam hamikdash, you go to daven by the kaisel, the closer you get to the makam hamikdash, the stronger your tefillas have a possibility of being accepted. Years ago, I was doing a question and answer. This woman said, I saw a guy who had a necklace with a Yud K Vav K on it. And I said to him, you can't bring that into the bathroom. And he said, why? God's not in the bathroom? I didn't know what to answer him. I would say, and God is in the synagogue? It just means that there are certain places where the concentration on HaKadosh Baruch Hu is stronger. So too, there are certain times. And so, Dir Shu Hashem Behimatzu, you should seek HaKadosh Baruch Hu when He's closer to us. These are the days between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu comes closer to us. Of course, Hashem is infinite. There's no such a thing as closer. It just means that He's more begiloi. And so there are certain times. So Yom Kippur, obviously, is a time when our tefillahs are more accepted. And can I daven on a random Tuesday? Of course I can. But it's going to take more energy to rip off the child-proof cap than when the arrows are lined up, like during Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. There are certain times. At the chuppah, the chaz and kala are fasting. And they say a vidui, just like on Yom Kippur. And they wear a kittel. He wears a kittel, just like on Yom Kippur. And she's dressed in white. Yeah? Because you're going into a day where when you get married, HaKadosh Baruch Hu forgives all your sins. It's a Yom Slicha and Kapara. Why? It's like Yom Kippur. Why? People don't appreciate this. When you get married, you're becoming a different person. Because now you're you, and she's her, and each one of you is a separate entity. When you join together, you become an Adam. As the Torah says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu made an Adam, Ish and Isha. He separated them. And when they join back together, they once again become Adam. So, until this point, you've been Shlomi and she's been Malki, and now you get married and you become a new entity, Shlomi Malki. Yeah? You join together to form a new person, a new entity. And that wipes the slate clean. And you start over again as a new person. So that has the power of all the avonos being forgiven. So for sure, for them to be able to daven under the chuppah, it's a special power of tefillah. And what about the people at the chuppah? So I already mentioned that the Beis HaMikdash is a special mokum tefillah, as Shlomo HaMelech said when he built the Beis HaMikdash, that our tefillahs will be accepted at the Beis HaMikdash. It has that power that our tefillahs are mekubal. Od yishama b'orei Yehuda uvechutzos Yerushalayim kol sasan v'kol simcha kol chasan v'kol kala. We speak about the Geula, that once again in the streets of Yerushalayim will be heard the sounds of a chosan and a kala. Why? Because when a chosan and kala get married and build a bayis ne'eman b'Yisrael. What is a bayis ne'eman b'Yisrael? It's the Mishkan. Eliezer comes back and says to Yitzchak, oh, have I got a girl for you? First of all, she's beautiful. Second of all, she's got wonderful midas. Third of all, she's from, and she's a balas chesed. Oh, unbelievable. Yeah, and plus, the Malach killed your father-in-law, so you don't have to deal with him. Yeah, and Nisim and the flowers, like kvitzas derech going there, and the water comes up to greet her in the well, and it's unbelievable. I said a tefillah to Kadosh Baruch Hu, picked a special girl for you, unbelievable. And he says, very nice. But none of that is what I'm interested in. Let's see when she goes into my mother's tent, if the nisim that took place when my mother was alive takes place. Does the bracha be'isa, the bread, stay warm like the lechem aponim in the Beis HaMikdash stayed warm a whole week? Does the cloud come over the tent like the cloud was always over the Shechina? Is the ner dolok like the ner ma'aravi, which stayed burning in the Beis HaMikdash all the time? Yeah. So I want to know whether she is able to make my home into a Mishkan. That's what I'm looking for. And that's what Bilam said when he wanted to curse the Jewish people, and he sees their homes and he says, Ma tovu alecha Yaakov, Mishkan asecha Yisrael. Every one of your homes is a Mishkan. And that's why when we go to a chuppah and we watch the chosan and kala, there's an aspect of the geula there. There's an aspect of the Beis HaMikdash being rebuilt, of the mokom hatfila that the Beis HaMikdash is. That's why for everybody at the chuppah, it's also a mesugal time to be able to daven, because we're accessing the Beis HaMikdash itself. And that's it for this episode. If you want to find out more about the show, you can go to my website, RabbiOrlofsky.com. You can sponsor an episode. You can sponsor a Parsha in 5. We're going to be restarting the Parsha in 5 on Dvarim, because I missed so much of the midbar. I didn't want to come in the middle. So I got a email from somebody who said they sponsored a Parsha in 5. We will move it over, Mirzah Hashem, to the Dvarim section. You can ask a question, leave a comment, download Shiurim, download the theme song, sign up for one of my online Shiurim, and that's it for now. Until next time, I am David Orlofsky, and this has been the Rabbi Orlofsky Show.
It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Torah and Simcha, ready to go. The Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Knowledge and wisdom will help you grow. Lots of fun in every episode, and we don't have to rhyme. No, we don't. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show on RabbiOrlofsky.com. Torah anytime, YouTube and more. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Torah and Simcha, ready to go. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Till next time till we meet again, it's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show.